Hello, folks. Dustin Zarni here, Democratic Elections Commissioner for Onondaga County in New York. Today is Sunday, June 25th, and welcome to Commissioner in a Car. And yes, I am out in my car, despite it being a snowstorm. Why? Because, well, that's what I do, right? So it's a little cold, and yet this is probably going to be a long Commissioner in a Car, because I'm dealing with a very complex subject today, and that's I'm calling this the tale of 5 vacancies. We're going to go over 5 recent vacancies, yes, including the Commissioner of Education vacancy that has been in the news, and how this comes about, why it comes about, and what are the resolutions to each of these 5 unique cases that we're having in Onondaga County. But first, it's 149 days until the June primary and 282 days until the midterm elections. This last week at the Board of Elections, it was a short week because of the Martin Luther King holiday, which was the subject of my last Commissioner in a Car. And but we were, we still stayed on task. We're 100%. Excuse me, 100% caught up with registration. That remains caught up. We're also getting ready for our annual meeting. The boards of elections have an annual meeting every year to appoint officers and adopt policies, which kind of regulate how we act throughout the year. It gives us guidelines for the commissioners to agree to regarding, different electoral events. We do that once every year in January. And so our annual meeting will be this. Usually we have our official meetings at the last Thursday of the month. So that's what's happening this time. And I'm going to go over that in next week's Commissioner in a Car. So stay tuned for that. But so getting right into it, I want to go into the tale of 5 vacancies. We've had 5 vacancies in public offices in Onondaga County over the last 2 months. And each of these 5 vacancies is a weird vacancy, although I'll be ending it with probably the weirdest and most rare. And what I mean by weird, I mean rare vacancies. Vacancies occur when someone is in public office and either through death, disqualification, or more than likely they win another office in the middle of their term. That is when a vacancy occurs. Of course, they could quit as well. But those are the 4 things that happen: death, disqualification, winning another office, or resigning, midterm. The most common one is winning another office, causing a vacancy. And in fact, of all the vacancies that we're going to be talking about today, 3 of the 4 3 of the 5 were because somebody won another office. And so how are they usually filled? Well, vacancies are usually filled by the political body that the vacancy occurs in. Sometimes there's an executive that fills that role. And we'll go over each body here that we're going to talk about with these 5 vacancies. But you may have seen in the past, county legislators have left, and the county executive gets to appoint. So the county legislature doesn't get to appoint, the county executives get to appoint. And you have also seen in the past where the common council or something like that, they get to appoint. But sometimes the mayor gets to appoint, and we're going to go into all of that. And then in rare cases, for like Assembly and Senate, there are special elections. But we don't have any of those happening right now. And, most of the time, the person is filling the vacancy for the rest of the year. And then there's an election that year that serves out the remainder of the term. Although not always, and we'll go into that as well. So let's get into these 5 vacancies, because vacancies is actually something that I really, we've had a lot of interesting ones over the years here, And this year is probably the most interesting. So I'm going to start with the easiest to explain and then get to the hardest by the end. So the first one is the City of Syracuse Common Council at Large. So last year, Common Councilor at Large, Rita Panagria, she won the Common Council presidency. Helen Hudson did not run again. I believe she was term limited. And Rita Panagria ran for that seat. She won it. She was serving in the middle of a 4-year term that was due to run out at the end of December 31st, 2027. So that means when she moved from the Common Council vacancy, or the Common Councilor at Large, to the Common Council President on January 1st, it created a vacancy in the Common Councilor at Large position that, there's 4 of those. Now there's only 3. And so that one position that is open until December 31st, 2027, that's when the next regular election is, had to be filled. So how does that get filled? Well, the Common Council is the one who fills that. It's not the mayor. It's the Common Council. And they have an interview process that they agreed to, as a city charter led interview process, that they have to have so many interviews, and then they have to decide who to fill that with. But, and we have seen this in the past, sometimes the person they fill it with isn't who the voters want, because there's a dual track, actually 3 tracks going on right now with the Common Council position, because the city of Syracuse is so blue, it's so Democratic, that really the Democratic primary is the competition. So at this very moment, the Common Council is interviewing about 8 or 9 candidates for the at-large position. They will choose one, and that person will serve until the end of the year. Now, the Onondaga County Democratic Committee, and I assume the County Republican Committee, are also interviewing people, and they will nominate someone who is the preferred person of the committee. All that does is that it instructs committee people to walk signatures to get that person on the ballot. There's 1,000 signatures that have to be done to get on the ballot, so that's a significant help. Now, that process is unfolding as we speak. A final decision on that would be February 12th, sometime after, I believe, when the Common Council is supposed to nominate someone as well. So they could nominate 2 different people. And then the third process is the primary. June 23rd is the primary in Syracuse. Now, whoever is appointed by the Common Council will only serve to the end of the year. And then we'll have to run again in 2027 if they win the primary and general election. That will happen in 2026. So there could be a primary here, and we saw that a few years back when I forget who left, but a person who's a guy was nominated, but the voters didn't choose them, and thus they served on the Common Council till the end of the year. But then the person the voters chose is the one who got in there, and because the city of Syracuse is so Democratic, it's unlikely that anybody who's not a Democrat will win that seat. And so the June 23rd primary becomes very important for that seat. It is important that this person will have to run again in November of 27. So they'll be running back to back November 26. That will be just for, the appointment from the Common Council serves from now until December 31st, 2026. The winner of the primary and general election will serve from January 1st, 2027 to December 31st, 2027. And the winner of next year's election will serve another 4 years. So this is the Town of Pompey board. A Town of Pompey, she won the supervisor race in 2025. So because she was a sitting town board member in the middle of a 4-year term, on January 1st, she ascended to the supervisor seat, leaving open the town board member. Now, once again, just like the Common Council seat in the city of Syracuse, it is the board that decides who to replace a vacancy, but it's the new board. And this is important because it's the board that takes the seat on January 1st. The vacancy doesn't happen until January 1st. And so it's the new board that has to do it. Well, along with Diana Carpenter was a guy named Phil Dunmore who ran on the Democratic line in Pompey. And the Pompey Town Board is made up of 4 town board members and the supervisor, giving them a 5-person board. And the supervisor is a Democrat with Diana Carpenter, and one of the town board members is a Democrat. Another town board is vacant, and the other 2 are Republican. So now the new town board is 2-2. And they're unlikely that they're going to agree on a 5th town board member that would shift the ideological majority on that board. So thus it'll remain vacant. That's actually not as uncommon as you would think. Town of Lysander had this happen just this last year where somebody died in the middle of the year, and the Democrats wanted one person and Republicans wanted another, and the Democrats they held it open for and usually on a town board it's not that big of a deal to hold it open. In fact, the city of Syracuse Common Council, there's a few people talking about holding that open till after the primary. But on the town boards, a lot of these issues are not partisan issues at all, except for majority control, except for control of the board and agenda setting. So it's that's why it's a big issue. So the more than likely that will be held open, and whoever the voters choose in November will be the person who will serve until the end of December or end of 2027, and then will be running for a full 4-year term at that time period. So that's the Pompey Town Board. Then we had a situation in the Marcellus Town Board, a slightly different situation. A guy named Gabriel Hood, who was a longtime Marcellus Town Board member, he won re-election in 2025, in November 2025. Unfortunately, he passed away shortly after the election, but before the beginning of the new year. This is a very weird situation. I haven't had this happen up much where a death occurs in those 2 months between. And what made this even weirder is that, much like the Marcellus Town Board, 2 Democrats won seats to the new board in Marcellus, and so that meant that if a vacancy was there on January 1st, and it would be because the guy died, and the term ends, the old term ends and the new term begins, and he can't be in the new term because he has passed away, then again, another ideological breakdown there, a 2-2 breakdown, which might have left that position open. However, the old town board, made up of all Republicans, decided to put in a person to fill out the year. So he basically served the month of December. That person, unfortunately, there was not an agreement with the Democrats and the Republicans coming in whether that person could continue. The Democrats said no, and the Republicans said yes. So it was deadlock 2-2. Because this appointment was put in December, there was a question about whether that person could serve going forward. I think it's pretty clear he could not unless he got a majority vote of the new town board. I ran this by the New York State Board of Elections. The case law is pretty clear on that as well. However, this was looking like it was going to go to court. It was obvious from the beginning that the old Marcellus Republican majority on the town board put him in to create this confusion when the new board came in to try to keep them from having control or having an open seat. And it looked like it was going to go to court. However, one of the Democrats who was coming in decided that this was going to get in the way of doing town business and decided to just allow him to be appointed and not have to go to court. So the new town board did appoint 3-1 to put this person on. And so he's on until the end of this year. And again, a new person is running. There will be that person who got appointed will be running on the Republican side. A Democrat will be running, and in November, the voters will decide who gets the remaining 3 years on that term, because it's a 4-year term. But because it's the even year law, we'll bring this. These are going to be on the even year. They're actually going to be running until have to run again in 2028. So that is a 3-year term. We'll have to run again in 2028. So whoever wins in November will run again in 2028 for a 4-year term at that point. So that is what's happening out in Marcellus. And then recently, the town of Salina justice, Paul Carey, passed away this week. It's very sad, very long serving justice and member of the community. Unexpected death. But this is a death that happened after the first of the year. But he wasn't elected last year. In fact, he was scheduled to be reelected in 2027. Judges are not do not go on the even year law. So, and the reason is because in the New York State Constitution, judges, when they run for election, always run for a full term. The only exception to that are village justices. But any other justice, town, city, Supreme Court, family court, whatever, if there's a vacancy, the new person is running for the full term. So the Salina Town Board, which is now all Democratic, will have the opportunity to put in a justice that will serve until the end of 2026, because now this vacancy happens. The town justice position will be put on the ballot in 2026, and whoever wins that will now get a 4-year term and have to run again in 2030. And again, it's because even though the original term was up in 27, when a justice runs for a vacancy, they always run for their full term, which in town justice is 4 years. So this will go till that. Now we get to the city of Syracuse Commissioner of Education. This is probably the most complex and weird situation that I've run into as Commissioner of Elections. And it is something that the Commissioner of Elections have to deal with, because the city of Syracuse school board runs on the November ballot. Most other school boards that happen out in the suburbs, they have their special May elections, and the Board of Elections actually has nothing to do with that. They use our machines, but that's it. We don't count their votes. We don't determine who's on the ballot. We don't get involved with any of these type of vacancy situations. They're usually running for a 1-year term. But the city of Syracuse runs for 4-year terms. There's 7 board members. They're staggered terms. And Commissioner Ballou had just won re-election in November of 2025 in a primary for a 4-year term that would go until 2029. Now, again, city offices are not part of the even year bill either, so it doesn't get truncated down to 2028. This term will go till 2029. However, the City of Syracuse Commissioners of Education as a board voted in December to hold a hearing and investigation on allegations of wrongdoing by Commissioner Ballou. There's been a lot of coverage about what that wrongdoing is. It has to do something with entering a building without permission and trying to move a student without permission who happened to be her grandson to a different class. I'm not going to make a value judgment on that. I did sit in the audience and listen to the evidence just so I could talk about it, but the value judgment on that is the Commissioners of Education. They get to make a judgment on whether that is enough to remove a public official who was just voted on by the public. And in their opinion, it is. And they voted unanimously on January 20th to remove Commissioner Ballou. Now, she just started a 4-year term. And but the question is, when does the vacancy start? And right now, the best evidence and the communication I've gotten from the school board clerk is that vacancy is effective immediately. So there will be an election this year. Commissioner of Education will be on the November ballot, which will mean they'll be on the June primary, much like the counselor at large. More than likely, it's going to be a Democratic person. Now, the county Democratic committee is now going to have to come up with a process to nominate somebody to get those 1,000 signatures. Other people who want to get it have to get 1,000 signatures. And the vacancy itself is filled by the mayor, not by the Commissioner of Education, but by the mayor of the city of Syracuse. Something, again, that is unique to the city of Syracuse, that the mayor appoints this person. And it will appoint them to be there until the end of 2026, at which time the winner of the election in 2026 will stay on until the end of 2029 and will run in 2029 for a full 4-year term. But there's a big but here. Commissioner Ballou's removal is subject to appeal. Is subject to appeal by the state education commissioner. I Rosa something, and I'm sorry, I should have put that down in my notes, but I don't have her name. But Commissioner Ballou has 30 days from the time of removal to initiate an appeal and ask for a waiver of the original decision from the New York State Commissioner of Education. This is important because 30 days from January 20th is about December 20th. The first day to start petitioning is February 24th. So we should know before the beginning of petitioning whether the state commissioner has granted, not ruling for Commissioner Ballou, but at least granting an appeal that keeps this position from being on the ballot right away. And you can understand why, there's arguments on both sides. The Commissioner of Education say she did something wrong, she should be off the board right away. And, the Commissioner Ballou would probably say she believes she's going to win the appeal, and allowing somebody to serve in her place, either by appointment or by ballot, would be a disservice. And then what happens if the Commissioner of Education rules against the State Commissioner of Education rules against the local Syracuse School Board? So we'll have to see what that commissioner does. If there is a stay, then I don't believe, and I have to read the wording of the stay when it's issued, I don't believe that this will go on the ballot yet. It will be held off the ballot until the appeal process is done and a final ruling happens. How long can that be? Well, that depends. It could be any. I've read on the New York State Board and also New York State Education Department website, and also was given to me by the school district clerk, that they say it could be 8 weeks at least, because from the time of the appeal being filed. I know Commissioner Ballou said this weekend she's going to appeal. I don't know if that appellate paperwork has been put in. And but I've heard of this. Other sources, the paper has said this can take up to a year. They have sources that say it can take up to a year. So this is going to be a longer process than I think we thought it was going to be. But a year is important, because if there's a stay issued before the start of petitioning or anytime during petitioning, and that stay lasts until after March 26th, then there will be no primary for this position in 2026. The parties get to choose who their nominees are at the general election. And if it goes beyond August 3rd of 2026, then this position goes on the ballot in 2027. So it is the timing of this, because it's so early in a term, becomes interesting. And we're going to have to see how this process plays out. Another wrinkle that could come up is if the Commissioner of Education does not grant a stay, it is theoretically possible that Commissioner Blue could go to court and request a stay from the court until a final appeal is done. That would be New York State Supreme Court. And again, I'd have to read what the stay says when or if a stay is issued. So I'm just putting out the possibilities here because this is a very weird thing. And obviously, as we go through the year, I will let you know what is coming out with this. But as of right now, I think the first thing that we're going to wait for is for the appeal to be filed and for a decision by the commissioner on whether to grant a stay, the state commissioner, whether to grant a stay of the ruling, and whether petitions will start on February 24th. So stay tuned. All right. That was what I wanted to talk about today. Those are the 5 weird vacancies that we've had. The tale of 5 vacancies for this podcast. Looking ahead this next week, obviously it's pretty snowy out, and if I wasn't stupid and labeled my podcast commissioner in a car many years ago, and there's a reason for that, and those of you who've been following around know why I started taping out in the car. It was basically about connectivity issues back in 2016. So that's the only reason I'm out in the car. Don't believe me, I'm not driving in this weather. It's pretty bad out there. So please be safe. But this next week we may not have, the Board of Elections may not be open on Monday. We'll have to see what the county executive is actually in charge of weather decisions on county buildings. And if he says we're open, we're going to try to get in there. If he says we're not, then we'll stay home and we'll post on our social medias and on our website about it. So we'll see what happens on Monday. But we will be in next week. Our annual meeting is scheduled for Thursday. That is our annual meeting where we re-elect officers and public policies. And I'm going to hold off talking about that till next week's Commissioner in the Car, because I think it's interesting to talk about what's the difference between just an office meeting and an annual or official meeting, and why we operate the way we do. And also on February 1st, which is Saturday, the deadline for getting notices to us by the town clerks and village clerks that are holding elections in November, that is coming up. And so we hope to, by Friday, have an official offices to be filled list. But as you talked about earlier in the thing, vacancies can happen at any time. So things might get added to that as we go throughout the year. So I did a weekly wonk this last week. I did part 4 of my Onondaga County 2026 or Onondaga 2026 series. And I did the Onondaga County Legislature. I did a top-level view of all 17 districts. I'm really proud of this one. Take a look at it. There's some age stuff in there, like always. And that led to my trivia question from last week. The trivia question was, what county legislative district is the oldest and what is the youngest? And County Leg District 16 is the youngest at an average of 46.88 years. And County Leg 6, which is the southern part of the district, the Syracuse, Marcellus, Spafford, southwest corner of the district, is the oldest at 53.45. Now, County Leg 16 is the youngest, and that is a weird, that is the inner city districts. But it also has part of the University of Syracuse is in there as well. And when the University of Syracuse is in a district, it's going to bring that average age down. So because there's so many young voters there in there. So it has, a good portion of the traditional dorms and student housing in the Syracuse University is in OCL 16. That brought it down to 46.88 years. 50.87 years is the county average. And County Line 6 is the oldest at 53.45 years. And that kind of gives you an idea of why Greg Erickson was able to win this district despite its general Republican lean. And that's because it also has a lean towards older voters as well. And older voters have been breaking the Democrats' way. It's younger voters under 50, and then 50 to 70, the Republicans are still pretty strong. And then 70 older, the Democrats have started to get a lot of their momentum. So that gives you kind of a hint of why Greg Erickson was able to win that district. All right, so this week's question. How many county ledge districts voted for Donald Trump in 2024? Hint, you can probably find the answer if you go to my weekly wonk. But, so out of the 17 districts, how many as a district total voted for Donald Trump in 2024? That's the end of my weekly wonk. I am going to say one more thing. I usually try to keep this podcast about election info and try to keep it as politically free as possible. We are talking elections, so politics is part of it. But this next thing is not about politics. It's about decency. It's about human rights. And what we are seeing in Minnesota with the ICE deployment there of 2,000 officers is, I released a little bit of a statement yesterday, and I'm going to back that up today. I said that, ICE needs to be abolished. It's one of the first times I've ever said that. And I stand by that. What we are seeing with these deployments is stochastic terrorism. They are using ICE, and by they I mean the administration, is the federal administration, the White House, Donald Trump, is using ICE as a terrorizing unit to go into blue states. We see them in Chicago, we see them in California, we see them in all of these other states. And many of these states that they're in have some of the lowest rates of illegal immigration. In fact, much lower than Texas and Florida. So this isn't about what they say it's about. It's not about enforcing immigration law. It's about enacting a policy against blue states as a weapon against them. And that's why ICE needs to be abolished and replaced with a unit that has oversight and responsibility and accountability, because that's not what's happening out there. And when we see these two unarmed people that have been shot in cold blood by ICE agents over the last 2 weeks in Minnesota, it is a shame. And if you can't stand up and say that is wrong, then there's something wrong with you. So I am holding that line. I stand by what I said. ICE needs to be abolished, and we need to stand up as Americans against this, because this is wrong, and it is being enacted as punishment. And the proof of that is Pam Bondi issued a letter 2 days ago to Governor Walz saying that if Minnesota would release their voting data, they would stop the ICE deployment. What does voting data have to do with immigration enforcement? It has nothing to do with it. This is about a administration that has decided to wage war on other Americans and on blue states that didn't vote for them. So yeah, there it is. I didn't know whether I was going to say something, but I decided to do so, and I'm happy I did. It's wrong. It needs to stop. Abolish ICE. Thank you. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.